This week at Council, Halton Hills looks to meet its park demand for 2031. What will Halton Hills do with all of its truck traffic? And what is affordable housing? You can find out all this and more coming up on What's Up, everyone? My name's Chris Golden, and welcome to What's Up with Council. The date is May 16th, 2019. Council did not take place this week. However, two council committee meetings did happen on May 14th. This included the Community and Corporate Affairs Committee and the Planning, Public Works, and Transportation Committee. The day started with a Community and Corporate Affairs Committee meeting and a presentation by Kevin Okimi, Manager of Parks and Rec and Open Space, speaking on how Halton Hills plans to meet its requirements for park space by 2031.
All of the objectives of this strategy work towards confirming the standards that we have, confirming the need for parkland, and then developing the criteria that will be used to review parcels of land and deciding how we'll implement the strategy to acquire those lands. I did want to just highlight that with the new Bill 108 that has come out, there will be some changes to parkland we expect. So some of the things that are in this report haven't caught up to the recent announcements, so we'll try and address some of that as we go through the report. So the original project identified 5 phases. The first phase was what we have, and that's, again, the background and policy reviews, the current standards, and confirming the fact that we need a town park. The second phase was striving for the Emerald Necklace, which is where we wanted to develop the criteria for parkland acquisition. And then that's really where we wanted to develop the criteria for parkland acquisition. That's really where we've brought the project over the last few years. The next few phases, it starts to focus on who owns the different land holdings, how we would get there in terms of budget, the types of studies we'd be required to do, and what some funding options may be. And then finally, we would get into a securement approach where we would look at how do we actually approach landowners, how would we negotiate the potential acquisition of the parkland based on the needs that we'll identify. The official plan identifies a current standard of 3.7 hectares per 1,000 people. Currently, the town only provides 3.1 hectares per 1,000 people. And if you get further into that, you'll see that our usable parkland is only 2.07 hectares per 1,000 people. So 3.7 hectares is really a historical number that has been used. It really arose out of Chicago in the 1900s. And so over time, this standard has been kind of adopted by a number of municipalities across North America. It is less desirable for the town to consider open space areas as parkland because we have other mechanisms through the official plan to acquire open spaces. We have that mandate to go after those natural lands through the development process and not consider them as core parkland. So the key recommendation that has come out of this report for the parkland standard is that we recommend lowering the official plan standard for provision to 2.2 hectares of usable parkland per 1,000 population. And if we lower the standard, you'll see that as you take the population needs and some parkland from Vision Georgetown, we'll still be about 56 hectares short by 2031. Now, as a point of reference, if we don't change the standard, we'd be 131 hectares short in 2031. Some of these facilities can be accommodated in Trafalgar Sports Park. There's still some undeveloped areas there, and some can be accommodated in Gellert Phase 2. But even when you take all of that out, there's still a deficit of approximately 43 hectares. But it doesn't really account for things like passive parkland, like Dominion Gardens, which is considered usable. It doesn't account for community gardens, event space, and those are all things that weren't defined in detail in the last Recreation and Park Strategic Action Plan. So as the current plan takes shape, we expect that we'll hear more from the public about those types of uses. We introduced some new classifications for urban park types, really getting to the idea that there could be urban squares, urban parkettes, strata parks, and by strata parks we're talking about parkland on top of like a parking structure. Another recommendation was to really look at linear connector parks, linear connectors. And these are focused on active transportation and creating linkages between parks. So you'll see we're hoping to get back to the land holdings by fall of this year. And then in spring and summer of 2020, we would finalize some of the other approaches.
That the shape and look of our community is going to be changing, at least in part. And so the notions of strata parks and public parks and public access onto private properties such as parking garages and so forth, I think is really helpful and something that we need to really seriously look at. And I think that the builders and developers and people who come to our community to build are going to be asking for that kind of thing too, that they will be bringing some of these ideas. And, you know, we may see trees growing on the third story of a terraced apartment building, and I think that's going to be very cool.
After this, Chief of Halton Hills Fire Department, Harry Oliveri, spoke about Camp Molly and the impact it is having on inspiring our next generation of female firefighters.
Camp Molly is a camp that provides an opportunity for young women, specifically in high school grades 10, 11, and 12, to experience what it's like to have a career in the fire service. So there were 3 days this past Friday, Saturday, and Sunday where they got to experience firefighting challenges, rescue challenges, got to listen to people from fire prevention, from the Office of the Fire Marshal regarding fire investigations, so that they had an idea of what the fire service was. The fire service is lacking across Ontario, Canada, as well as North America, a strong contingent of women in the fire service. So this was an opportunity to allow 25 young ladies the opportunity to decide perhaps fire service is something that they would like to make a career out of.
Firefighters who volunteered their time to be there and act as instructors from Halton Hills. And just to see the enthusiasm of these young ladies, not only from Halton Hills, but from the Halton region, it was very worthwhile, very rewarding, and I think at some point in time, we should honor and recognize these young ladies amongst us. So.
Next up, there was a Planning, Public Works, and Transportation Committee meeting. Here, a very interesting question was brought up by Councillor Brian Lewis when he asked...
Just a very straightforward question. Can somebody please describe to me what is affordable housing?
So I will ask Mr. Burke to come forward to provide the technical answer.
This is directly from the region's official plan. So housing which has a market price or rent that is affordable to low and moderate income households spending 30% of their gross household income on housing without government assistance.
Then the next part would be is how do we take anybody who owns 100 acres and say to them, the developer or the owner of the land, here's what you must do in that land. You have to have and create affordable housing. And where I'm coming from exactly is, we'll just take the farmer. He's got a 100-acre farm, and they stand there and they tell you, my retirement package is the land I'm standing on. And if I can pick a number, $500,000 an acre, all right, that's what he wants. And then the developer who buys that from that farmer says, oh, I can't build homes in this area in order to qualify. All I want to know is, who has the authority to say to somebody, here's what you must do, without those things being subsidized by somebody?
The region and the town would have targets. For example, we have a 30% housing affordable target in the Vision Georgetown secondary plan. It's really a target, it's an aspiration we're trying to achieve, and we do that primarily through the mix of housing that's provided. So as I know you're aware, there's a much more aggressive housing mix targeted towards higher density apartments and townhouses within the Vision Georgetown lands. And that's really how we're attempting to address the affordability question there. But it's really the market then provides that housing, and the town and the region don't set the price that the housing can be sold at.
Okay, so the recommendation is to get this working group going. Will the working group address the issue of subsidized housing or specialty housing for seniors or anything like that?
We would very much look at this working group to come together and put together a very defined list of actions that the town can take related to the different areas that are described in the report, in the figure near the beginning of the report that shows sort of where the continuum of housing. It's a very complicated process, and what we're learning as we're getting more into this is the partnerships and collaboration required between all levels of government in order to implement almost anything related to the assisted housing file.
I read this report and found it really confusing to figure out which level of government is trying to do what, or they've got some goals, and it's hard for me to figure out how, say, the province says they're, I don't know, improving wait lists. Like, okay, how are they improving the wait list? To me, you'd improve it by having more housing, but I'm not sure if that's what they're doing, and simplifying rent geared to income rules. Well, rent geared to income's those rules have been working pretty well for 20 years, so I'm not sure how, like, to me, it's just, I can't figure out who's really doing what here.
Lastly, there was a Halton Hills trucking strategy study. This was a 9-page study designed with the overall objective to develop a trucking strategy that supports economic and employment activities while balancing the needs of the community of Halton Hills.
The track strategy, it's a document that pertains to the entire town. A lot of the policies and improvements through whether it's the signage improvements or the trucking committee components will deal with all areas of the town. We were just in the staff report trying to highlight some of what I would call the more recent discussions related to trucking issues, recognizing too, as you had indicated, Councillor Lewis, some of the areas are not within our jurisdiction, and we wanted to be careful in terms of making sure we were focusing our efforts on where we thought we could make some differences.
Looks like there'll be some letter writing by myself to the MTO to try to get them involved, and we did a presentation to the minister of the MTO, and I think it might be something that we'll want to do again. I know we've asked the ministers in the past to come here. We asked the leader of the opposition to come here to really see firsthand. Time ran out in the previous government, but I think it's something that we'll have to look at, trying to, whether it's at AMO or where, but try to have some time with the minister. I need a little bit more information of what the committee's going to do and what is the makeup of the committee. Is it something that obviously is going to be professionals, as you suggested, police, but I'd just like to get a little further clarification of what you're thinking, your thoughts.
That committee is something that we would want to establish, which would include certain people from regional police. We were hoping that we would have key council members on there, Halton Region Transportation Services, our staff, and then key people from trucking companies. And we really want to talk about issues that we are having that are some quick wins that maybe we can continue establishing and making happen, but also to work collaboratively to try and resolve some of the ongoing issues. We talk about in our strategy signage, so areas that we maybe want to improve signage, areas that maybe was not mentioned in the truck strategy for additional work that we can work on to see if we can make those things happen. So it would be something that we would continue doing to improve the routes that we want to establish, and then move forward so that basically that there is an engagement and communication between all, so there's no surprises when we start unrolling some of these improvement strategies.
Looking at the proposed strategies and the roads to be evaluated, Trafalgar Road, and looking at the possible bypass down the road, Mr. Chair, and if you notice, the 4th line and 5th line is not to be looked at, and we know that there's a lot of fear-mongering during the last municipal election from a couple of the non-elected candidates that were trying to say the trucks are going up the 4th line, that we had to collectively write a letter, myself and the ward councillors, to go to every door up there to assure the people that there wasn't going to be a bypass up the 4th line and 4th line south of Highway 7. It wasn't just north. And the way the rumors were being spread, and I'm glad to see that that we stand by our commitment to the people that live there, that the 4th line and the 5th line are definitely not to be considered for any sort of a bypass. Just want to make that comment. So if you're watching, I hope you enjoy my comments.
Will we have enough park space in the future? Will our roads become more crowded with trucks? Will my broke ass ever be able to afford a house? You can find out all this and more in a future episode of... Thank you, everyone. My name's Chris Golden, and always stay up. Good day.